now have the 47th President of the United States. Your initial thoughts, were you surprised?
No, not really. I think there were some polls already indicating there was going to be a huge turnout for Trump. There was a fair amount of energy with regard to the camp, and I think there were already indications beforehand that the Kamala campaign was a little bit edgy already. So, I mean, unless certain things happened that happened like way back in 2020, barring that, we were almost expecting this. In fact, I think we were expecting an electoral college vote of above 300 or something. Right now, I think we're still below 300.
Yeah.
But
The polls didn't expect that turnout.
no, there were. Some of the more accurate ones, especially the ones that got it right in 2020. I can't remember the names right now. We're really predicting a huge turnout for Trump.
If you look, though, on social media, which is where everybody's tuned in right now, a lot of people would say the Blue Party would win. Kamala would win with all the endorsements from Hollywood, from all the celebrities.
Yeah.
What do you make of how that expectation shaped up versus how the reality ended up being?
Well, it depends on the social media that you were looking at. I think one of the better things that Elon Musk did was to convert X, Twitter, now X, into some sort of the Wild West in social media. So everything, all the information was really going out. And some of the surveys that would not normally be coming out in the mainstream news media were coming out on that particular platform.
So you're tuned in to X mostly?
Well, all of them. So.
I
We
will
still
admit,
are.
I am tuned
were-
into X.
Yeah,
Very
we were
much
following
so.
it too.
And Elon
most
was
of the
saying you
posters.
are the new media.
Yes, social media is
He
new.
tweeted that.
Yeah, he
just,
did.
hours ago.
He also went on a Joe Rogan's podcast, right, which was
endorse
widely publicized. And then he supposedly got Joe Rogan to endorse Trump last minute.
Yes,
I mean, do these vloggers, these influential podcasters, should we be looking at them with a different way? I mean, we've already seen it happening, their influence, but...
Well, that's
do
the
you
thing.
make
That's what I was saying earlier. I mean, I think people would be looking at a certain set of platforms, but for I think for a specific political class, and you're talking here of Joe Rogan and the others, they were actually really tapped in to the mindset and to the pulse of what the politics are. And you're talking of other people like Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, and the others as well. And so, no, actually, again, I'd say the results were not surprising. I mean, it was something that we were expecting from even a few weeks back. I think from the moment that Trump appeared on Joe Rogan, and then the moment, I'm not being flippant, but the moment that Squirrel died.
Yes.
Do you think that
Peanut.
was consequential? Because some pundits were saying that if that affects the polls, then it could also be the end of the dominance of mainstream media
And I agree.
holding the debates.
Yes, and I agree. With regard to the Squirrel, see Peanut,
Si Peanut, yeah.
I wouldn't say that it affected the undecided, because at this particular point, I don't think there are any more undecided, particularly in the last 48 or 72 hours. But it did, I think, generate a motivation for people who were thinking twice of whether or not to go out in the cold to vote, and then suddenly they would go out and vote. So.
Before we get on to the next topic, I just want to bring in another statistic, which is Joe Biden's exit polls on CNN, his approval rating. And this is closely related to this election, because in that latest poll, you'll see, if you could just flash it, there we go, that's the CNN poll. Only 38% approved of his presidency. This is essentially what we call the exit poll of the president. Not vast majority, but the majority are dissatisfied with his performance. And so we were saying earlier that this election seems to be a referendum on the Joe Biden presidency as well.
Yeah, which is like any other election that you have, whether it be the incumbent running or a fresh pair of opposition people running. It would always be a referendum on the party in power. And I think that was the problem that Kamala had, because it was a really inconsistent message. She was trying to say that we have to go for change, but she was there for the 4 years that Biden, of course, was presiding over the economy and everything else. So that
She was not able to turn that around, even if she tried to separate herself from the Biden administration.
It's incredibly difficult. I don't know any possible way of an. It could have been good that if she could have just immediately said that.
Did you expect a sweep in the swing states? I mean, Regina was showing it a while ago.
Yeah, well, actually, in a way, yes. And I kept telling myself, is this, in a way, some sort of possible manipulation by the media? But not to the level of the 1984 sweep that Reagan had, but somewhere around that level. So I think that Kamala was still able to hold on to certain states. Shows still the hold that the Democratic Party has on those states that they would still prefer to protect.
You know, so much has been said about this election, but there was this one show where I was watching, and they pointed out that a lot of the younger voters, like the Gen Zs, they don't really associate with a certain party. Meaning that they could vote either way because they don't have like allegiance to the Democrats or to the Republicans. And therefore, does that mean it's more of a personality-based things now? Are we voting outside like partisan lines?
Actually, the surveys that I'm seeing is that the Gen Z, the younger voters, tend to be, particularly the males, would go more for the conservative side. And you can see this across the board, whether it be on the church surveys. There's a liberal church faction, there's a conservative faction. Most of the young people would be, now, why they're doing that is not something I am exactly understanding, but it's palpable. You could see it in across the board, particularly even in the legal profession that I have. So, yeah.
Let's talk about what the implications are for the Philippines. First off, what do you think the relationship between Donald Trump and Bongbong Marcos will look like?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very good. I mean, look at it this way. Trump exhibited a huge deal of patience with the other president, the previous president. And this time, we have a president who actually had a personal relationship with Trump. And I think he admitted it when he was a young man.
He said it in his statement,
Yeah,
pretty
in his
much.
statement. So I think, and there are a lot of how should I put it, similarity in the mindset, the policy, security-wise, and all of that. So having said that, I don't think we should be worried too much of a radical change in policy. As far as policy is concerned, I think it's going to be the same, at least for the next couple of years. Now, the tactics, the way these policies are to be carried out, may of course have a little bit of the Trumpian flavor. He does have a flair for the dramatics and all of that. But one thing that we can, the benefit of looking at the Trump presidency, the one that's coming in January 20, the inauguration date, is that we have an experience of him from the previous 4 years that he was president. So we pretty much know the way that he will govern and so on.
It's less
now,
unpredictable.
Less unpredictable also because in the sense that this time he knows who to appoint. Because he himself admitted that the first time around when he came into Washington, he absolutely had no knowledge of who to appoint in the
But they say this time around that it might be a revenge administration, that he's out there to get the Democrats, and there are less people around him to keep him in check because of the anti-Trump in the Republican Party are gone. So
Yeah.
how do you expect that second
I
presidency
would-
to look like?
Also adding to that the fact that he's been battling a lot of legal issues the last 3 years. So it's a time for...
Well, the legal issues, that's another. With regard to the revenge thing, well, he has been accused of a lot of things, fascist, that he's Hitler, and so on. But again, we go back to the first 4 years. He never did actually any of those things. One good way of being able to expand your executive power is essentially to try to get into a conflict with another country. And that's how you actually expand your government. He never did any of that. In fact, he tried to pull himself out of the conflicts that you had. So essentially, he
incite
limited.
the rebellion on January 6th, though.
Well, we can discuss that because the evidence that has
for which
become
he's still facing
yeah,
cases.
Yes,
Yeah.
but anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that as far as the statements that he made, when you actually look at the videos and put it into the context of the statement, he wasn't really saying he's going to be vindictive. He's actually, what he's saying is that he's going to apply the law. So if, for example, we're talking about with regard to immigration, he's essentially going to apply the law, which I think Obama and Biden, there was a law on immigration and they just refused to apply it. So what he's saying right now is he's going to start applying the law.
Does that mean that you agree with what Julay Tihanki was saying earlier, that it could get tighter for immigration, especially for Filipinos?
No, actually, and I'd like to, I mean, with all due respect to July, no, I don't agree. He will apply because he said so, certain rules on immigration. But I don't think it should particularly worry Filipinos because we have been quite compliant as far as the rules are concerned.
There are a lot of TNTs.
Yeah, but not in the same level as the other countries are.
I
So
think
if
he
you go-
also got a majority of the Latino vote, which I think says a lot.
Says a lot as
Yeah,
well.
it says a lot about what they actually think, how he's going to handle these immigration policies.
Yeah, so
moving
I think
forward.
as far as the Philippines is concerned, even with regard to the tariffs, and I mentioned this earlier during the strat-based thing, it's not something that we should be really worried about because of the fact that he will be targeting perhaps some of the other more, how should I put, malignant competitors that they probably face, and the Philippines is not one of them. And so actually the fact that he will probably raise tariffs on these countries serves as an opening for the Philippines to be able to go and export and offer its products to the Philippines as an alternative to these countries that he decides to raise tariff measures and so on. So.
Where do you think Kamala went wrong with her campaign? I mean, she was trying to speak to the middle class, and we do know that inflation is a problem, is a number one concern amongst Americans. Where did she go wrong? I mean, if you take a look at Trump, they say his policies, economic policies, were favoring the large corporations, the big businessmen, and essentially his 10% tariff on Chinese products were going to drive inflation. Was it? Do those things really matter here, or was it just dissatisfaction with the current ruling of the Democrat Party?
It's really, I mean, it's one wouldn't like to put down someone who's already hit the mattress, but since you asked the question, I mean, there were really a lot of things that I think. Well, one of them is the fact that you do not campaign by hating on the other side. You probably would want to add more voters to you rather than alienate a huge swath of voters. Let's go on to the more perhaps controversial areas. I don't think Biden pretty much liked Kamala. The fact that Jill Biden, for some reason, started going out in a red dress early in the morning to vote. The fact that Joe Biden would suddenly start saying things like garbage as far as the Trump supporters are concerned at the exact moment that Kamala was making a speech, I think, in the Washington Monument. These are things that all added up, gave a pretty much scattered
So
campaign.
negative politicking.
Yeah.
Well,
does not
Trump
work
did that
too?
too. Come on, let's be fair. He was quite misogynistic on the campaign trail. He was hitting Kamala very personally. So you know, he's been known for his fiery rhetoric. But we're running out of time. I want to bring it back to closer to home, which is let's keep focused on the defense and security commitments. What about Taiwan? That's still a big unknown because they didn't talk much about China. Yeah, they touched on it a little bit, but there's a little bit of nervousness now in Taiwan now that Trump has won. I'm going to play you a soundbite if you could just listen to it.
He's telling Taiwan to pay for, our own protection, right? The semiconductor industry, things like that. So I think there's just more unpredictability, and this is already a tightrope that Taiwan is walking. And he can be very provocative in general with his rhetoric. So we don't know where it's going to go. Maybe he's going to be like, allow more officials to visit and just like. And I think from my view, in terms of the geopolitical cross-strait relations, I think mainly it's the rhetoric also that can heat things up.
Okay, so the idea that Taiwan might get invaded in this presidency is not so far-fetched.
But that's regardless of whether it was Trump
Correct.
or Kamala or
Correct.
Yeah,
so now that we know it's going to be Trump, how do you think he might deal with this? In relation to that, how he might deal with Chinese aggression in the West Philippine Sea?
Well, we have a set of precedents on how he would behave. And so we look at the way he responded, for example, to North Korea. We look at the way he responded, for example, to Iran and some of the some terrorist groups that decided to do certain things that were against the interests of the U.S. So we know precisely that he will respond as violently as he can if he needs to, or make the necessary threats that he needs to. On the other hand, with regard to the soundbite that you just played, it pretty much again plays back to what he did with regard to NATO, where he asked everybody to pay up. And but in the end, obviously, it came out to the benefit of NATO, and frankly, any positioning that he does, wherein he removes the focus of the U.S. from any other area, and so that he could actually fulfill a more good pivot to Asia, is something that I would actually look forward to.
What do you think Trump would do in his first day in office? He did say he would try to end the conflict in Ukraine within 24 hours. He did say he would let Elon gut the federal government. What do you think? I mean, in listening to him, what do you think he would do first?
I really have no idea. But what's it? What's
That's the thing. He's a big unknown still. Even though this is the
no,
second term.
it's more like no idea in the sense that he did promise a lot of things, but we do know what are in his powers, and what's in his powers would be the executive orders, and what could be done within the executive orders would be number one, immigration, number two, with regard to the tariff rates, and perhaps other matters that have to do with the, for example, the fuel. Whether or not you cut back on the bureaucracy and the regulation with regard to the digging of oil and all of that, so that hopefully will have an effect on the lowering of the fuel prices, which also again will have effect on inflation. The other matters that you mentioned, that he did mention, that he will try to do on day one, which is with regard to Ukraine and the talking to Putin. Of course, that obviously will take time. But what he can do with regard, again, to an executive order is to stop the sending of money to Ukraine, which he has promised to do. Now, if he does that, that's going to be quite a huge development.
You know who else is supposedly close to President Trump? Former President Rodrigo Duterte.
Yeah.
They had good relations, right?
Si Bato
Yeah, and he
masaya
came
ngayon.
here. Trump came here in 2017.
And they seem to be quite chummy.
Senator
right?
Padilla, masaya din.
Oh, yeah?
Allies niya, former
Okay,
President
so
Duterte.
I guess they're thinking this might give them leverage that baka it might,
Because a lot of people are also
Mapayagan
afraid
ng
of
US.
the effect of President
maybe
Trump
they'll
on
throw
the
out the ICC case. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah,
here,
because
but,
they're
but,
saying he could affect NATO. It could affect so many things.
But maybe the idea there is
The ICC.
former President Duterte might run to former President Trump
For
for
help?
Do you think that's far fetched?
I think that's far-fetched. For so many reasons. I don't think he has a record of actually interfering in other people's politics. And as I said, he has a good relationship with President Marcos anyway, and the team that surrounds him. I don't think will. He has as I said, he has a better team right now, particularly in foreign relations. So I doubt pretty much that
But
he would rather.
one thing that's changed within these hours is the Bitcoin price, crypto stocks.
Yeah.
Bitcoin price hits record,
All-time
crypto
high.
stocks surge, dollar soars, stocks rally. Those are
Basically,
the
markets
headlines on finance.
markets have priced in Trump, and it's looking
Is it
good.
because he's a businessman, or
Yeah, because he will.
Or that the election was
very
smooth?
business-friendly policies as he did the last time. Right, and he's a crypto believer. That's why.
Yeah.
So.
Something to do with the regulation on
Yeah.
that. They're
But we're gonna
really
come-
looking at that.
We're
But
going to
yeah,
come back to you on that, what he does on the first day. We're going to have to leave that there. Thank you so much for joining us, University of the Asia and Pacific School of Law Dean, Professor Jemy Gatdula.